You've probably seen DeepSeek all over your feed this week. The Chinese AI company has been making headlines left and right because their R1 model isn't just competing with giants like OpenAI and Meta, it's beating them in some areas and causing massive market ripples. Nvidia experienced the biggest market loss in history on Monday. In just a week since its release, DeepSeek shot to the #1 spot in the App Store, knocking off OpenAI. But the part that's blowing everyone's mind is that they built it for just $5.5 million. That's less than Sam Altman's car. It seems like DeepSeek is the scrappy startup no one saw coming. But now, people are carefully looking at DeepSeek and starting to poke holes into some of their claims. So, what does all this mean for America's AI future? DeepSeek first caught some attention in late 2024 with its V3 model, which gave Meta's open source AI tool a run for its money. But it was the R1 model that really put them on the map last week, and the cause for all this market turmoil. You see, they claim they built R1 for a fraction of what US companies are spending. To compare, OpenAI and Meta are out there burning through tens of billions of dollars to train their models. And it's not just about the money, it's the efficiency that's got people talking. They say they only used 2,000 Nvidia chips to train R1. For perspective, OpenAI needs upwards of 16,000 chips for similar models. So the $5 million question, or if you're OpenAI, the $14 billion question is, how is DeepSeek pulling this off for so little while keeping up with the heavy hitters? DeepSeek says they pulled it off with a method called mixture of experts. Here, I'll show you. It sounds fancy, but really it just means splitting tasks across smaller, specialized models instead of using one giant system. On top of that, they're using something called test time compute, which lets AI take more time to think about its answer instead of rushing to respond. It's like turning a sprinter into a marathon runner. Slower, but more effective over time. And unlike OpenAI, DeepSeek is OpenAI by going fully open sourced, which means anyone, developers, researchers, even competitors, can access it, experiment with it, and build on top of it. OpenAI and Google keep their models locked down tighter than a bank vault. But DeepSeek's approach is like handing out the keys and saying, here, have at it. And Meta's VP and chief AI scientist explain this massive rush of success DeepSeek is having. To the people who see the performance of DeepSeek and think China is surpassing the US in AI, you're reading this wrong. The correct reading is open source models are surpassing proprietary ones. DeepSeek's breakthrough hasn't just shaken up the stock market like Nvidia's 17% drop, it's also sparked serious questions about whether the US is losing its edge in AI. Some experts are even calling this the Sputnik moment, suggesting China could be on the verge of overtaking the US in AI innovation. It's a huge statement, but it just shows how much DeepSeek has shaken things up and how worried people are about what it means for the future of AI. But here's where things get murky. DeepSeek's ability to do so much for so little has tech experts asking some uncomfortable questions like, are American AI companies massively overhyped? And what's the point of all these chip restrictions if China's still pulling this off? Alexander Wang, the CEO of Scale AI, dropped this bomb in a CNBC interview last week.
My understanding is that DeepSeek has about 50,000 H100s, which they can't talk about, obviously, because it is against the export controls that the United States has put in place.
So let's do some math here. If they have 50,000 H100 chips, those go for roughly $30,000 to $40,000 a piece. So if we carry the zero a bunch of times, that puts it in the ballpark of roughly $1.5 billion to $2 billion. That's a little far off from the $5.5 million DeepSeek claims they spent. So is DeepSeek really this efficient, or do they just have way more chips than they're emitting? And if it's the latter, then how did they even get this many chips? Because you see, back in 2022, the Biden administration threw down a big bet. Stop China from getting its hands on the most powerful AI chips in an effort to maintain the US AI dominance. Makes sense, right? AI isn't just about chatbots, it's about global power. Whoever leads in AI could control the next wave of innovation, economics, and even warfare. And the focus was on Nvidia's H100 and A100s, the Ferrari and Lamborghini of AI chips. As in, they process massive amounts of data ridiculously fast. They are why OpenAI can train models like GPT-4 and why Meta and Google are spending billions on AI infrastructure. Then in 2023, they tightened the rules, extending the ban to older, less powerful chips, which is right about the time that DeepSeek started. And just before leaving office, Biden went even farther. No chips, no software, and no renting access to US cloud systems. On paper, these restrictions seemed like a solid plan. But here we are, in 2025, and DeepSeek just launched a model that's competing, or maybe even out-competing, the best AI systems in the world, which is why a lot of people are scratching their head to how they made that happen. You see, Nvidia's been fighting these restrictions the whole way, even firing back at Biden's new restrictions a couple weeks ago, saying this sweeping overreach would impose bureaucratic control over America's leading semiconductors, computers, systems, and even software, by attempting to rig market outcomes and stifle competition, the lifeblood of innovation. But here's where things get even messier. Nvidia didn't just sit back while these restrictions rolled in, they found a way to work around them. Technically, it's all within the rules, but it's got a lot of people in Washington giving them serious side-eye. Let me explain. To make sure they didn't lose a massive market, Nvidia created these so-called diet versions of their high-end chips just for China. On paper, they fall under the performance cap set by the US rules, so technically not as powerful as the A100 or the H100, but experts think you can tweak the firmware or use a bit of engineering wizardry to unlock most of the hidden power anyway. So Nvidia gets to sell these chips without flat out breaking export laws, and the Chinese buyers get to still end up with something that's pretty close to the real deal. It's a clever dance around the regulations that had a lot of people in Washington starting to raise questions, but from Nvidia's perspective, it was all legal and above board. So all these little workarounds might prove this DeepSeek $5.5 million claim is kind of which brings us to America's counterpunch, Project Stargate, which is backed by tech heavyweights OpenAI, SoftBank, Oracle, and Microsoft. The plan is to spend $500 billion building cutting-edge data centers and supercomputing hubs across the country. And they're already hitting the ground running. The first $100 billion is already rolling out, with 10 massive data centers under construction in Texas, each spanning 500,000 square feet, and plans for 10 more are in the pipeline, with the other $400 billion rolling out over the next 4 years. But the buzz around the announcement didn't last long. Hours after, Elon Musk took to X to throw some shade, claiming they don't actually have the money. He even singled out SoftBank, saying they have well under $10 billion secured, which was met with Altman taking the high road, saying he genuinely respects Musk and his accomplishments. But Elon's comment struck a chord online. Many questioned whether the companies involved truly have the resources to pull this off, because the numbers don't exactly add up. OpenAI has raised billions, but burns through cash fast. Oracle reportedly has about $11 billion in reserves, and SoftBank is sitting on $30 billion. Impressive, sure, but far from the $500 billion. However, while Elon and Sam wrestle over who has the money, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella might have dropped the coldest bar of all time.
Look, all I know is I'm good for my 80 billion.
Whether they find it under the couch cushion or borrow it from a friend, AI infrastructure spending is not slowing down. Meta alone already set aside a casual $65 billion this year to build out their AI. So that's where we stand. DeepSeek rattled the entire AI world, at least for a minute, but the US is still betting big on Project Stargate, pouring billions into AI infrastructure. Whether DeepSeek just changed AI modeling forever or not, one thing is certain: the race is still far from over.